Hi, I'm Dave Luong, and you're listening to Trek Rant, the Star Trek podcast where I rant, rave, overanalyze, and obsess about all things Trek. This is a quick mini podcast which I'll be doing, which you can find on the United Geek Federation's YouTube page or at our official website, www.unitedgeekfederation.wordpress.com. Today, I'll be doing a short retrospective on the life of the great Leonard Nimoy. First off, my apologies, but I meant to release this episode around March 26th to commemorate Mr. Nimoy's birthday. I'm a few weeks late on that, but unfortunately I had a scheduling snafu. I did want to bring that up though, since as saddened as I was about Mr. Nimoy's death a year ago, I wanted to focus on his life. Obviously he gave the world a lot through his art, love of the fans, his gigantic heart, and of course his depiction of Spock. I don't know what I can say about Spock that hasn't been said by countless other fans. Spock was the prototype, the originator of the alien character in Star Trek. The person on the bridge who could view humanity from an objective lens and judge us as a species. The person who could, for right or wrong, praise or condemn us, and who, regardless of what he did, forced us to look at ourselves in the mirror and ask two important questions. Is this logical? And perhaps more importantly, is this human? Just as countless fans have commented on Spock as a character, everybody has their favorite Spock moments. Spock is just this cultural icon like Mickey Mouse, Batman, Spider-Man, Bugs Bunny, where even if you've never seen an episode of Star Trek, you know who Spock is. You can visualize who he is. When I say Spock, people instantly know the pointy ears, the haircut. He's just one of those icons, those pop culture icons that's ingrained in not just American culture, but global culture as well. For me personally, I love those Spock moments where you got to see that human side of him, that side that he so desperately wanted to repress in favor of the logical path of the Vulcans, but which he couldn't, ultimately because, as a half-human, half-Vulcan, his humanity, his emotions, which he tried so hard to keep down, these were intrinsically woven in the fabric of his identity. This contradiction of somebody who represented cold, unfeeling logic and rationality, but who could also display anger, sadness, regret, love, and loyalty, made Spock unique, not just on the bridge of the Enterprise, but in the realm of pop culture. Again, everybody has their favorite Spock moments, so here are just a few of mine which really show what Mr. Nimoy was able to do with that character. First off, there's the naked time. While it was still a very, very early episode of the original series, and you could tell that Leonard Nimoy was still developing the Spock character at that point, there's so much that occurs in this episode that sets the groundwork for everything we know about Spock to come. That's really the first time we get to see the conflict that raged in Spock. When he's no longer able to control his emotions, when he's breaking down over a mother who he couldn't love, he actually says, "My mother, I could never tell her I loved her. An Earth woman living on a planet where love, emotion is bad taste." You get the sense that Spock, who on the surface is this faithful adherent to the Vulcan philosophy of logic, can see the sacrifice that he's made for this lifestyle, for a rational existence, that he can't even tell his own mother he loves her. That scene alone makes this one of the best TOS episodes in my opinion. Another of my favorite Spock moments is from This Side of Paradise. It's yet another episode where we see Spock reveal his emotions. Once he's broken the Spore's spell, he says to Layla, the woman who he fell in love with, "If there are self-made purgatories, then we all have to live in them. Mine can be no worse than someone else's." Again, we see Spock acknowledge this cage that he's put himself in, this purgatory as he calls it, that because of this adherence to logic, he again denies himself happiness, love. Of course, fans don't just love Spock for all the doom and gloom in his life. There are also tons of great comedic moments with the character. His interactions with Kirk and McCoy, just across the board, are hilarious and really do a lot to show the relationship, the brotherhood on the Enterprise bridge. You always got the sense that no matter how much Spock and McCoy disagreed, there's this respect, this brotherly affection that they couldn't shake. And of course, Spock and Kirk are practically inseparable from one another. In the same way as people think of Batman and Robin, or Sherlock Holmes and Watson, you have Spock and Kirk. To steal a line from Edith Keeler from City on the Edge of Forever, when Spock asks her, "Where would you estimate we belong, Miss Keeler?" Edith says, "You, at his side, as if you've always been there and always will." I don't know if I can really mention any more specific Spock, Kirk, and McCoy interactions, since every episode of TOS was just full of this great banter between the characters. Literally any episode of TOS, you'll see this great scene with McCoy, Kirk, and Spock just interacting with one another, and in this very brotherly way where they can still argue with one another, they can still totally disagree with one another, but you get the sense that they respect each other and ultimately love each other, and that's just fantastic. It's just fantastic stuff. And of course, when we're mentioning great Spock moments, and I know I'm going with an obvious choice on this one, but Spock's death in Wrath of Khan is just one of the great scenes in all of sci-fi. Both Leonard Nimoy and William Shatner brought that scene to life. When Spock tries to stand up after being exposed to the radiation and he's trying to face Kirk, you can see Leonard Nimoy just standing up very slowly, straightening his uniform, just trying to encounter his own death with this great sense of dignity. And then when he actually gets to Kirk and starts speaking with him, there's literally a barrier that separates them as they're trying to speak their final words to one another. And that barrier, you can see that both of them want so much to just have this one last final contact with one another, this just being able to embrace, but literally they're being kept apart from one another in Spock's dying moments. It's, again, fantastic stuff. The great thing is that Leonard Nimoy put such a great, I want to say subdued, understated performance in that scene. It's perfectly fitting for Spock, a character who wants to keep his emotions in check, but who simultaneously wants to say goodbye to this man who's been his friend, his brother for all of these years. I would say to me that this isn't just one of the best scenes in Star Trek history or sci-fi history, it's one of the great scenes in film history, period. I'm just going to end this off by reading to you a piece I wrote shortly after Mr. Nimoy's death. In the few days following his passing, I was contacted by a couple of news outlets for comments. They apparently found that I was the president of the Santa Monica, Los Angeles Star Trek Club and wanted some fan comments, some fan reactions. And it was this mixture of feeling sad about the passing of one of my heroes, mixed with being asked to make some sort of comments on the spot. It was a strange few days. But after a few days, when I had some time to digest and process everything that went on, I wrote the following. So the last 2 days have been kind of surreal. As somebody who wears their geekdom, especially with regards to Star Trek, on his sleeve, when Leonard Nimoy passed away on Friday, people immediately wanted to know how I would react. It's kind of interesting, considering that I never personally knew the man. However, it's completely understandable too, in that as a self-professed Uber Trekkie, I can't deny the impact Leonard Nimoy, through Star Trek, has had on my day-to-day life and way of thinking. I was asked questions by all of my friends, several of my coworkers, a handful of interviews from CBS, KCAL, and the LA Times, and even some perfect strangers. And really, it boiled down to one question. How are you feeling? And that's a damn good question. Honestly, I'm feeling great. Because the one thing that's helped me more than anything else in understanding Leonard Nimoy's death has been Leonard Nimoy's life. When the news broke, there was of course shock and sadness. However, there's also a lot of reflection of what Mr. Nimoy left behind, of what he helped build, and the legacy he's left countless other fans who he never met but touched all the same. And when I've talked about that legacy with other people, it always had the same effect. We couldn't help but smile at it all. So, I may have lost one of my heroes this weekend, but he saved me again, all the same. Thrusters on full. And with that, that's the end of my tribute to Leonard Nimoy, the man who brought us Spock. There's a lot more that can be said that I couldn't possibly fit into one podcast. Like I said, we all have our favorite Spock moments, so I'm curious to hear what some of your favorites are. Leave them in the comments on our YouTube page or on our official website at www.unitedgeekfederation.wordpress.com. Thanks for listening, and most importantly, thank you, Mr. Nimoy, for giving us such a great character to view our lives through. I'm David Luong, and you've been listening to Trek Rant.